Welcome to another episode of Wheel of Horror, the podcast where two best friends spin a wheel once a week, it chooses the horror movie, and they discuss it. Today we're talking about 2003's Darkness Falls, which was directed by Jonathan Liebesman, and, I'm your co-host, Alec.
This is Joe.
You know, Joe, I think this... you thought maybe that VHS was the worst one. I think this definitely takes the cake, dude. Holy shit.
I was thinking that. I was thinking, which one do I prefer? What is the lesser of the two evils here? I don't know. Should we get into that now?
Dude, I can't. Honestly, this is going to sound really crazy. I can't think of a worse movie we've covered on Wheel of Horror than this one, in my opinion, obviously.
Whoa.
I don't know, man.
I mean, yeah, I'd have to I'd have to go down the list. Probably, yeah, I mean, obviously out of the ones we've covered, VHS would be the only one in the running. And it's tough. I feel like this one is just so much more generic than VHS. And I guess if I had to go with VHS, at least it offered you something different every 15 or 20 minutes. Mm-hmm. And this is just kind of the same dull, cliche, generic horror movie for an hour and a half.
Well, the thing about VHS is, like, I didn't think that the found footage, like, trope was tired at that point yet, and, I don't know, I hadn't really seen that many recently, so I was like, yeah, okay, and there's a couple segments that are not very good, but, yeah, man, this one's just, like, this just feels like nobody gave a shit. Like, the actors didn't care, the writer, the director, like, nobody cared. Like, this movie just got made.
So I'm assuming you didn't see this in theaters back in January of 2003?
No, I did not. I was 12, so I couldn't even legally do it, I guess.
Gotcha. Yeah, same. I was a little older than 12. I could have seen this movie if I chose to. I don't remember exactly why I chose not to. I was at school in New York. I was studying theater. I was still very much a horror fan. Don't forget, 2003 is the year I saw Freddy vs. Jason 5 times. But I was trying to broaden my horizons and expose myself to other types of media as well. But yeah, Darkness Falls, just, I knew of it. I knew of this Killer Tooth Fairy movie, but yeah, had no interest in seeing it. I feel like 2003 is a really interesting year for horror movies. I feel like we were in between trends, you know, like the teen slasher trend that Scream had kicked off kind of petered out, I would say, around the time Valentine came out in 2001, or maybe you could make a case for like Halloween Resurrection even.
Oh, yeah.
And you know, the remake thing would start up with Texas Chainsaw Massacre later in 2003, and we're still a year away from Saw. So I feel like a few things are about to happen in horror. We're just not there yet, and this movie is kind of left right in the middle.
I love live events, but I hate buying tickets. The hidden fees suck, and coordinating with friends is a nightmare. I always end up fronting a bunch of money and then chasing down my friends to get reimbursed. And if they flake, I'm stuck with the whole bill. But then I discovered Fanimal. Fanimal has tickets to everything, and there are no fees. The price you see is the price you pay. Not only are the prices transparent, but they're almost always lower than anywhere else I look. And for any hot tickets, like Austin City Limits, or a Dodgers game, or a weekend concert, Fanimal is always the cheapest option. Nobody goes to live events alone, so why buy tickets alone? Fanimal's patented group purchase makes it easy. First, you set a minimum size for your group, and choose the number of tickets you want to pay for yourself. Then you invite friends. When the minimum size is met, everyone gets charged and receives their tickets. If the minimum size isn't reached in time, nobody gets charged. You don't commit until your friends do. And Fanimal has amazing customer service. Check out their hundreds of 5-star reviews. The next time you need tickets, go to Fanimal.com or download the Fanimal app and sign up with code HORROR for $20 of credit towards your first purchase. Check out Fanimal and experience more. 100%. There's two things I want to mention about what you just talked about. Yeah, man, it feels like the early 90s with slasher films. Like, it was like before Scream, before the decade really got like nailed down about like what is this decade's horror going to be. This is the tail end of that. So I totally agree with you. For me, though, I never saw this movie until this time, but I distinctly remember the trailer on TV, like, ruining me as a kid.
Mm.
Like, I did the same thing I did with Hellraiser, where I had never seen it, but I built it up in my head what it was. So in my mind, I was like, okay, so you can't, as long as there's a little bit of light in your room, it can't get you. So I, like, hadn't even seen the movie, and I convinced myself of this as a kid. So, like, I would have the TV on, or I would have, like, a nightlight or anything, because I'm like, well, at least that thing can't get me now. And I didn't even fucking seen the movie. Like,
I was wondering, like, we're now 19 years on from this movie. I was wondering if there are maybe a generation of fans that this is kind of a cult classic for them, because maybe they saw it when they were kids and it scared them and they, God knows I have guilty pleasures and bad movies that I grew up with that I champion to this day. I wonder if there are people like that. I don't think there are many. I don't feel like this movie has gained much of a cult following in the past 2 decades.
no. I talked to people at work. I was like, you ever seen Darkness Falls? They're like, no. Like, there's not one person I met that was like, oh, I love that movie, or had even seen it, of all the people that I'd spoken to this week. So, kind of came and went. No sequels, no straight to DVD, like Darkness Falls 2, no remake, nothing. I mean, it just kind of came and went.
Yeah, and it made pretty decent money. I did a little bit of, Wikipedia research, and it made decent money. When I saw that it was a January release back in '03, that was kind of a red flag. I do feel like, especially back then, January was the place movies went to die.
Mm-hmm.
But it actually made decent money, I was surprised to see. And I do know this director. I've seen a few of his movies, and I kind of have the same feeling about all of them that I've seen. They're not, like, offensive, but not really memorable either. He did the second Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake, The Beginning, which I remember thinking was fine. And then he did, I think, the 2014 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which I remember seeing and have no real memory of.
That's right, yep. He also did Doolittle, that new one with Robert Downey Jr., which apparently, like, tanked. Oh, he also directed 4 episodes of the Halo TV show, which, okay. But yeah, not a horror guy, really. I mean, he did. I know it's crazy because he started with Darkness Falls, then did the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but then kind of went away. Yeah, I don't really know too much about this guy. I guess his first movie, he was pretty young, he was 26, and he's from South Africa.
Yeah, and I did recognize one of the writers. There were 3 writers credited on this movie, and one of them did work on the most recent Scream.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, like you said, yeah, this doesn't feel like it was anybody's vision. This doesn't feel exactly like a story anyone was dying to tell.
No.
I wouldn't be surprised if this was a movie that maybe began as one thing and ended up as another through studio interference or something. And I'm totally speculating. I know nothing about the production of this movie, but I feel like there's something here. Like, there's something to this premise. I feel like the idea, as silly as it sounds, of a tooth fairy coming into your room to take your teeth. I mean, that whole concept, I'm almost surprised there hasn't been a horror movie about that, And when we get this little prologue that gives you the backstory of this old woman, the villain of this movie, I was thinking, hey, maybe we have something here. I feel like there is potential.
There really is, and it just kind of reminded me of, like, we just covered Candyman recently, and it just was kind of like this tragic story from the past, and this character keeps coming back to haunt them. Like, yeah, there is potential here. And it's basically like the idea of the people of this town, when their kids lose their last baby tooth, that's when it comes for them. That is a very scary idea. But it just, like, I don't know, it was executed like such shit. Like, it just felt like a TV movie. Like, there's just, I don't know. I also just didn't think the woman was scary at all. Like, we just saw, well, Valentine's Day, they have the Cupid face, but these white generic faces, I don't know, it just doesn't have the same hit like a Michael Myers one, I guess, even though that's just a white face too, but...
Yeah, I mean, even when we get into the opening scene with this little kid in his bed, I'm thinking, we might at least get some good scares out of this movie, but it ends up just being kind of loud, obnoxious jump scare and quick cutting, really quick editing, barely getting a glimpse of the Tooth Fairy. I mean, there's nothing really atmospheric about it. There's nothing really scary about it. And Could I just ask this? This is like one of my main problems with this movie. I knew this opening scene was a flashback because you see the little kid has retro Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles action figures that I had when I was a kid. So I'm like, oh, okay. Obviously, we're in the past. But why isn't this movie about kids? Like
I know.
it's a Tooth Fairy movie. It should be about a killer tooth fairy hunting kids. The whole idea is, when they lose their last tooth, that's when she comes for them, right?
Yeah.
So it should be like it should be about this group of friends who are kind of coming of age, and that's what this movie should be. I don't know why we flash forward 12 years and then we're with these 20 somethings. All I could think of is, oh well, that's what was trendy at the time.
Yeah, I mean, there weren't a lot of shows or movies like that at this stage. I mean, we were kind of like in between the Stand By Me, all that stuff, and then nowadays, like every freaking movie is about a group of little kids doing stuff. But this has that one kid, Michael. But you're right. Like, why don't we focus on Michael and his friends, and then have Kyle and Caitlin be like the previous generation that can like impose this wisdom onto them to help them beat this thing? Because it's basically like, so Kyle's mom gets murdered randomly. He figures out that the lights are on, so he's safe. And then for the last like 12 years or whatever, he's just figured out how to beat this thing, but has lost complete communication with all of his friends and family. And the entire town, for some reason, thinks he's the bad guy in this situation. He killed his mom. Don't they know about the Tooth Fairy lady?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the whole backstory that we learn in this really strange voiceover that almost makes it feel like it's some kind of fairy tale. And the person doing the voiceover isn't a character in the movie. It almost feels like something from a completely different movie. It sets me up for something we never really get. Like, I feel like this spirit is going to want to, I don't know, be on some kind of revenge mission. But we learn she hunts kids, but she also hunts anyone who sees her.
Yeah, that's the whole thing, is like, if you don't look at her, you're fine. Right?
Right. And the whole thing about her only appearing in the dark, if you have a flashlight, you're safe. These rules are really not working for me.
I mean, you could pretty much always beat her. I mean, it seems like that Kyle character has beaten her his entire life, so I don't know, it's just so stupid. Yeah, like the police scene, there's so many chances for lights. They just, how the fuck? I don't know, it's so dumb.
So this Kyle character, in the 12 years since his first encounter with the Tooth Fairy, he's never been in pitch black darkness, right?
That's what we're going with. Yeah,
Okay.
sure.
Got it. All right. Okay.
Yeah, that's so stupid. And also, like, has this Tooth Fairy just been, like, standing by waiting for him? Like, she doesn't have anybody else to be focused on? I mean, I'm sure she was, but you'd think that this town, it would be like it, where they have, like, newspaper articles about the kids disappearing and all that stuff like that. Never happens. So, it's just, I don't even know, like, where to go with this movie.
Yeah, one other thing I'll jump into is I was really surprised not to see any like CW stars in this movie. I feel like I didn't recognize any of these actors really, and I feel like, where were the guys from Supernatural to play this lead? I was just actually, it might have been a little early for that because I felt like those guys were always popping up in horror movies in the 2000s. They were in like House of Wax and Friday the 13th and My Bloody Valentine, like one of the two. But I guess that was later. That was like 2009-ish. So
Yeah, what about the guy from Smallville? What about those people?
sure, yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of Smallville, this movie got me thinking about the remake of The Fog that Tom Welling was in. Did you ever see that?
I think I did, from like 2005. I remember it. I don't remember if I saw it.
I mean, you very well could have seen it and completely forgot about it because I saw it once, have barely any memory of it. And this movie actually got me thinking of it a little bit. And it kind of got me thinking of, I feel like around this time, people started being very hard on like PG-13 horror, which isn't totally fair. I mean, ratings don't always give you an idea of the movie you're in for. I mean, Jaws was a PG movie, So,
Yeah.
Poltergeist was a PG movie. Drag Me to Hell was PG-13. I mean, there's lots of good examples of horror movies that aren't rated R,
Yeah.
but like this movie, The Fog, like I do feel like around this time there was just this string of just really toothless, no pun intended, horror movies that were just so dull.
Well, it was funny you mentioned earlier, you said like maybe production changed what this movie was supposed to be as it was happening. Do you remember from 2002 the movie Ghost Ship?
I know of it. That's another one I haven't seen.
Yeah, so that one's actually way better than this, and it's not good, but it's still way better than this. But that movie was kind of interesting. They basically tricked all of the actors, so they wrote a story about like it wasn't a horror movie. It was about like this group of people that find a bunch of lost treasure on a ship, and basically about them like almost screwing each other over and greed corrupting them. That's what it was about. Then they land in Australia, and then be like, "Hey, there's been some rewrites, and it's a ghost movie." And they were all under contract, and they're like, "What the fuck is this?" So the lead actress, I can't remember her name, but she's completely disowned this film because of that. But this movie, I mean, I can't really think of how they could trick them that much. Like they must have known kind of what it is.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's just pure speculation on my part. I just feel like, there is a sense, like you were saying, this can't be the movie these people were setting out to make.
Yeah.
And, and just like the whole setup of this movie feels so different than the movie we got. Like I said, there just seems to be a lot of potential. And I feel like even halfway through, it kind of becomes an action movie. Like the scene in the police station, I was almost thinking like Aliens when all the Marines were getting taken out one by one. And
Uh,
then they run into the elevator with the kid, and it was reminding me of Terminator 2 when the T-1000 is attacking the elevator. I don't know. I just felt like I didn't feel like this was a very consistent movie.
no. Yeah, it did shift tones quite a bit. I do want to just mention the actor, though, because we were just talking about, you're surprised the CW or whatever. Do you know who the lead actor is, the guy who played Kyle?
I don't, but I did read a sad little article that he's no longer with us.
I know, because I was like, who is this guy? I'm like, how did he get the lead in this film and all this stuff? And yeah, apparently he died of an overdose in 2007. He was 34. But I had never heard of him. I'd never seen him in anything. And it's just kind of sad. It's just like one of those actors that you're like, damn, this guy, this could have been like the beginning of his career, really. And then he was in The Shield for 16 episodes right after this. So I
Oh,
don't
wow.
know. Just a sad little tidbit, I guess.
Yeah, that's too bad, definitely.
But I didn't recognize anybody except for in the beginning the girl that plays young Caitlin or whatever. She was in the series of unfortunate events movies. That's the only thing. But I don't know if you noticed this, because you work in casting, so maybe you have to pay attention to stuff like this. Did you notice the accents coming through in this movie at all?
I didn't know. Is it Canadian?
Oh my god, dude. Okay, maybe it's just because of like my ex or whatever, but it's all in Australia.
Oh,
So the only Americans in this film are Kyle and Caitlin. Everyone else is Australian, and I could tell hardcore. You didn't notice at all?
no, not at all.
Oh my god, dude. Yeah, there's the sheriff was pretty good. He was trying to go for like a Southern American kind of accent, but dude, I noticed the little kid especially could not keep his accent together to save his life. It stood out to me so hard. But I can't believe you didn't notice that. All right, maybe it really is. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I feel like at a certain point, I started just kind of watching this with a glazed over look in my eye.
Well, the thing that really stood out to me is in the bar scene where that guy just beats him up for no fucking reason and then goes outside and continues the fight. But that guy, dude, I am pretty sure they had to dub his voiceover.
Mm.
I don't, because I looked at his mouth, I was like, this isn't matching up. So I think that the guy could not get an American accent.
Oh, wow, interesting. Yeah, no, I'll take your word for it.
Yeah, I don't know for a fact, but I don't know. I could notice it was a lot of Australian accents. I wonder why. I wonder why they would film it down there. It takes place in Maine.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like Australia was pretty busy with some big movies back in like the late 90s, early 2000s, like the Matrix sequels.
Oh,
I think the Star Wars prequels, the Lord of the Rings movies, those all shot in Australia. So, yeah, I mean, it's not unusual.
Oh, Lord of the Rings was New Zealand. They get
Oh,
they get so
excuse
mad.
me. Sorry about that.
That's like the pride of the country.
Oh no! What I
No.
lost you, all your New Zealand listeners.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I don't know. I'm just trying to think of anything about this movie that like was positive.
Well, listen, I do think towards the end, I was at least kind of having some campy fun with it. Like this whole concept that she can't get you in the light, so you have to stay in the light. And like there's this scene where they have to get down the staircase and only sections of the staircase are lit and other parts of the staircase are like pitch black, so they have to like jump over those parts of the stairs, and it's almost like that game you played when you were a kid, like the floor is lava.
Oh yeah.
So
Oh yeah.
I was actually kind of having a little bit of fun with that. And I'll tell you, once we get to the end, if you don't mind me just skipping to that,
Dude,
I actually laughed out loud during the very final moments when, the Tooth Fairy has revealed herself, and she actually looks pretty cool with the burned face.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's this confrontation with the hero, Kyle, and like his arm is on fire and like he punches her in the face, and they they have to give him like a hero one-liner, and all they could come up with was, "I see you, bitch," and then
Yep.
oh my god,
Jesus.
I was dying. No, I was legitimately having a good time for like a couple minutes there. So I know it's terrible. I'm probably not supposed to be laughing, but after an hour and a half, I'll take whatever I can get, and I thought that was a pretty good time.
This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Bard's Clothing. Here's the honest truth. The days of "Hi, my name is" are over. We live in a virtual world, and our images are being shared on social media and professional pages every day. So with over 1,000 fabrics to choose from, Bard's Clothing is here to tell your story through clothing. Make sure the image you want people to see is the one that you're sending, because by the time you get face-to-face, their mind might already be made up. Quality clothing, all made here in America. Head on over to www.bardsclothing.com and follow them on Instagram @bardsclothing.
I'm so glad that you just mentioned it's an hour and a half. And then I want to go back to that really quick, but it's an hour and 25 minutes. Okay. Did you notice how long the fucking credits were?
Oh, that doesn't surprise me. Yeah, I mean that's an old trick. You just pad out the credits to make your feature length running time. I mean, yeah, this movie has that kind of stink all over it, where it was just either huge plot points or were cut out, or things were rewritten. I mean, that's just that's what I mean. There's just something about this movie that just feels like it was a production in chaos.
Well, but I mean, dude, it's a feature-length film with 11 minutes of credits. That's like Lord of the Rings status. This was an hour and 25 minutes. So it's an hour and 15 minutes, really.
Right.
So just insane. But you were mentioning the ending and how it was just kind of like campy and the cheesy one-liner. So I feel like this was something that started in the early 2000s, and I want to see if you can remember anything earlier. The ones that really stand out to me is like, "Hey Freddy, welcome to my nightmare, bitch," or whatever from Freddy vs. Jason. The "Trick or treat, motherfucker" from Resurrection. But I can't think of anything earlier, so I want to know if you could.
Yeah, you're talking about like the final moment where the hero vanquishes the villain and they have a little witty one-liner.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in a horror movie, I mean, that kind of shit was all over like action movies, like Arnold Schwarzenegger movies, even going as far back to as like James Bond. But in like a horror movie, I mean, Smile, You Son of a Bitch, I guess it starts there with Jaws.
Good call.
But yeah, I don't know. Oh man, the Freddy vs. Jason one. You're welcome to my nightmare, bitch.
Yeah.
Yeah, the 03 had some real doozies, didn't it?
Dude, that's the thing. The early 2000s is like when I feel like they're like, we need this. This is part of it now.
Yeah, I can't say any are jumping out at me. I'm trying to think of like the Freddy movies, the Jason movies. Not so much. I'm sure I'll think of a bunch of them when we're done recording. But yeah, it does feel like something maybe that came in vogue around this time.
Yeah, so I don't know, something that stood out to me, and then obviously just like the runtime, it's so bad. There is another thing I wanted to ask you. So in 2002, there was a movie called They.
I saw I saw it in theaters.
You did, okay. So
Yep.
in if you look at the Wikipedia for Darkness Falls, there's like literally nothing. It's just like this movie came out, but then at the bottom it says see also They, a 2002 horror film with a very similar premise to this film. Did you find that? I've never even heard of this one.
Yeah, I saw They on like a first date.
Nice.
and shocker, things didn't work out. But that's actually one that I've been kind of curious to revisit because Wes Craven produced it, and also kind of like this movie, probably in a couple days, I have like zero memory of it.
Mm.
Yeah, it is about some kind of boogeyman from when these 20 somethings were kids. That's about all I remember. So maybe I'll check that one out again.
Yeah.
Even though if they're comparing it to this, I'm not sure if I want to.
Well, the money, because yeah, we said earlier that Darkness Falls it actually made 4 times its budget back. Dude, They didn't even make its budget back. So like, damn.
Yeah, I that was a very empty theater, I remember.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't know, man. Overall, I think the only thing this movie really has going for it is like the premise, and the ghost is kind of scary when the mask breaks off. Like you're like, all right, this is a little terrifying. But can you think of anything else that you're like, I liked this part of it?
Um, I was really rooting for the movie. Like in that opening scene, I thought it had some creepy potential. Like if the kid, is in bed, we know the tooth fairy is around. Like if he just opened his eyes and she was at the foot of his bed, just something subtle, not obnoxious musical stings, quick cuts, quick editing, just simple, scary. I don't know who is to blame for this movie. Like I said, I feel like there were things going on behind the scenes that affected this movie, but it just wasn't a time for like subtle, atmospheric, scary movies.
Hmm.
So this movie just didn't stand a chance for me. But you know what? I want to try and be positive. Yeah, I mean, I think the Tooth Fairy herself was kind of creepy, and it had some nice like woods with how I love woods with some smoke effects, some smoke machine. I'm a sucker for that. So yeah, there was some cool atmospheric shots, and oh man, I'm really struggling here.
No, yeah, dude. Well, now that you're saying it, the one thing I did remember is I actually thought she sounded kind of scary, like just like whatever noise she made. It's kind
Yeah.
of like the Grudge kind of.
Yeah, it's like moaning. And, now that you mentioned The Grudge, I mean, that was kind of a short-lived horror trend, or not far from this time that The Ring started, the kind of supernatural Japanese-inspired horror trend. Maybe the script was like sitting on a shelf and someone thought, this is kind of like The Ring, kind of like The Grudge. Well, maybe we'll dust this off. Actually, I think this is before The Grudge.
Yes, so the Grudge came out I think in 2004, in the American one, I think.
Yeah.
But it's weird because I look at like this movie and I look at Ghost Ship and House of Wax, and I'm like, I know House of Wax is a remake, but I'm like, why don't they try to remake these now? Like these aren't terrible premises, they just were badly executed. So I think there's potential here for this to actually work. Make it R, make it modern, and I don't know. What do you think? Do you think that like they always remake good movies, but maybe we just need to start remaking like shitty movies?
Yeah, I mean, I think to some extent that's a pretty good idea. Like, I think in the 80s, there was success with remaking like 50s B movies,
Right.
like, The Fly
The Blob.
and The Thing, The Blob. Yep. And, those movies were kind of classics in their own right, but, you update them and you bring in modern special effects. And yeah, I think that would be a cool way to go. I was actually thinking this would have been interesting as a period piece. Like the whole backstory took place in like the 1800s. So
Mm.
what if this was like, The Witch, that kind of movie? There were a lot of ways to go with this, but they just chose the kind of most generic way.
Yeah, well, if you are interested, Joe, Joe Harris wrote Darkness Falls: The Tragic Life of Matilda Dixon, a prequel comic. So you can have your questions answered, I guess, if you really want to read the comic.
Maybe I'll dig a little dig a little deeper into the Darkness Falls multiverse.
Oh, sweet Jesus. Well, I don't know, Joe. You got any last minute thoughts on this one?
Not really.
Yeah, I know, dude. This is a rough one. I mean, I hate being negative, but like, dude, there's just some movies that aren't good.
Well said. Put that on the poster.
Yeah, dude, speaking of the poster, come on. The tagline is "Evil Rises." Like, did they just throw a dart at a freaking board of generic taglines?
Yeah, and then the poster itself is just nothing. It's like a lighthouse with some hands just like grasping. It's just like, I feel like nobody was on the same page making this movie.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yeah. All right. What do you say we spin the wheel?
Let's do it.
All righty. Spinning. All right, you probably like this one. So we got The Hills Have Eyes, 1976.
Okay, yeah. I mean, it's been a while. It's been a long time since I saw that one. But yeah, I'm always in the mood for a little Wes Craven.
Yeah, little Wes Craven right before Nightmare on Elm Street. So yeah, this will be good. Yeah, it's been, oh god, probably since high school since I've seen this one too. So, well, everybody, thank you very much for listening into our episode on Darkness Falls today. Sorry if we were a little negative, but you know, we like to be honest here. If you haven't had a chance, we released our episode on Day Shift on Friday, so you can check that one out. And also last week, we released our episode on Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2, Freddy's Revenge. And we'll see everybody next week with The Hills Have Eyes.